Global electric car sales have risen by 25% in 2024. And actually, that means that in terms of total numbers, electric car sales grew by more in 2024 than in 2023. I've been saying this all year. I know many of you have agreed with this, but quite a few of you haven't. You've been saying, oh, that doesn't include this country, or that doesn't include, well, what about Germany, or what about, well, actually, it does. This is for the entire planet. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. Global EV sales jumped by 25% in 2024. Now, obviously, China increased its sales numbers. Europe increased, but only by a little bit. Because keep in mind that even though electric car sales went down in Germany, and that's true, they actually increased outside of Germany. But actually, if you include plug-in hybrid numbers, the numbers are even better. Global sales of fully electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles, in other words, vehicles you can drive as an EV, rose by 25% last year to more than 17 million cars, helped by a fourth consecutive month of record sales in December as China continued to grow and Europe stabilized, data showed on Tuesday. Now, electric car sales in the US actually increased as well. Incentives and emissions targets pushed EV sales in China and aided Britain in overtaking Germany as Europe's largest electric car market in 2024. Now, research firm Romotion is basically saying Germany's falling behind. They are. The German car conglomerate is in a crisis. They are in a rut, and they have been now for a couple of years. This is the line being reported to you. China's sales growth slows. That's what everyone's saying. And I've read this in, I don't know, at least 50 different articles. In fact, an article I'm quoting this information from, Business Standard, says electric car makers look into 2025 as a transformative year as China's sales growth slows. I don't actually think that's correct. In fact, China's sales grew. Their car sales grew by more than 4% last year to 31 million. So people are still saying this stuff on social media, and I'm sure they will all year. Oh, China's having a crisis, so there's not enough people to buy all these cars being made. Well, China's sales went up by, like I said, nearly 5%. Actually, this is not correct. This information is completely false. Because here's the thing. China's government is subsidizing the sale of new electric cars in multiple ways now. So there's Chinese EV incentives, there's registration incentives, there's local government incentives, there's also incentives just to get rid of your old car. China will pay you to get rid of your old clunker. Doesn't matter if it's some little micro box, which a lot of Chinese people own, which are just worthless cars. Doesn't matter if it's an old EV that had a lead acid battery, just a piece of junk. China will pay you a couple of $1,000 US to buy a new car. And seeing as you can buy a pretty decent electric car in China for $5,000, a good one for $12,000, you can see here that sales numbers in China are very, very likely to grow. In addition to that, the actual savings numbers for the Chinese are much higher than in the Western world. The Chinese save their money. Now, yes, a lot of them have lost money in property downturns, property collapses in Evergrande, going bankrupt. The largest company in the world goes bankrupt. It's going to have an effect, right? It is true, but this it's still a reality that the Chinese have higher savings and they have less car ownership. In fact, significantly less car ownership in China than the United States or Europe. So that means there is massive potential for growth in EV sales and car sales in the Chinese car market in 2025. The Chinese government has continued its subsidies. It's not slowing them down. So I think it's highly unlikely that the Chinese car market will contract, as all these so-called media experts who just quote, to be honest, nonsensical figures are claiming. It will actually grow and increase over the next 12 months. In fact, a few of these American investment banks have predicted that the Chinese car market will grow as well. Will electric car sales grow in the United States though? Well, they might not, because obviously the US government is now Republican. Donald Trump is in charge. He's saying that he will repeal, basically get rid of EV incentives. This will have an effect on the US EV market. There's no doubt about it. This is not a good thing for the US car market in general. Obviously, Trump thinks otherwise. Let's wait and see what happens. What are your thoughts? Global sales of fully electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids rose actually 25.6% year on year to 1.9 million in December. So in December, sales rose even more, not by much more, by 25.6 instead of 25%, but that's still, actually over the year, Sales numbers were about 24.8% growth, but then in December they were 25.6%. So it is definitely trending in the right direction. Sales in China actually jumped by 36.5% to 1.3 million in just December alone. So 36.5% growth in the world's largest car market to 1.3 million just in December. That is just ridiculous. That means that China sold 11 million. Now, JP Morgan and a few other investments analysts have said that EV sales in China will grow to around about 12.5 million, possibly 13 million this year, meaning they'll continue to grow. Now, I believe those estimates from those companies are pretty conservative. I think it's most likely that China will go from 11 million to around 14 or 15 million this year. In the United States and Canada, EV sales rose 8.8% to 0.19 million in December, and Europe reported sales of 0.31 million, which was an increase of 0.7% from the same month in 2023. In the rest of the world, December sales rose by 26.4%. The rest of the world basically they have access to Chinese electric cars. Brazil, Mexico, Russia, a lot of these other countries, they don't have these tariffs on Chinese electric cars. They're just letting them in. They're like, bring them. There's 0% tariff. Australia, 0% tariff. So EV sales from China, particularly, have risen drastically in those other countries. Have a look at Thailand's car market. That's one example. The removal of subsidies in Germany had a devastating impact on the whole European market. If the US follows suit, we may see the same there, said Romotion. Romotion data manager Charles Lester, commenting on November data following European Union's introduction of tariffs at the end of October, told Reuters that there was no clear downturn in sales of major Chinese-made EV models. In fact, if anything, the opposite. A EU filing showed last week that automakers facing tougher CO2 emissions rules were planning to pull together and buy carbon credits from electric vehicle companies, including Tesla and Polestar, to avoid hefty fines. Now, obviously, Polestar is a Chinese car company. Meanwhile, China, in a bid to promote EV adoption while reviving economic growth, extended last Wednesday the auto trade-in subsidies into 2025 as part of an expanded consumer trade-in scheme. If this doesn't work, if China's car sales don't grow, as industry experts are predicting, China will come up with more incentives. They're not going to just say, oh, we give up, we're going to roll over. That's what they'll do. So I guarantee you this is all part of China's plan. And what's China's plan? Well, China has the capacity to make more than half of the world's cars today. But experts like Michael Dunn say that by the end of the century, well, by 2035, I should say, 2035, China will have the capacity to make nearly 100% of the world's cars. That's what they want to do. A little bit scary. It means if you're a US car automaker, if you're a US automaker, if you're a European or Japanese automaker, and you're not making EVs and good ones and not innovating fast, you will be disrupted. Maybe you won't be disrupted in the United States, but you will be in Mexico, in Brazil, in Central and South America, in places outside the European Union, in Southeast Asia. The global car market, it's not just the United States. It's not just for the Japanese, it's not just Japan. The global car market is huge, and it is being disrupted by these Chinese car companies who are making impressive EVs, and they're willing to sell them at a loss in order to gain market share. Legacy automakers are not in a position to do that. They have enormous debt burdens. They have investors that are saying, you made a loss in the last quarter? Fire them. Fire the CEO. That's it. It's pretty much an unwinnable position. But what this all does mean is it's good for consumers, at least in the short term. You'll get cheaper electric cars. Those electric cars will be better, and this will reduce your cost of living. You can charge your EVs with solar. Really, it's a net positive. So ultimately, my advice is this. Don't listen to the media. They were convicted yesterday in the UK of lying. Rupert Murdoch's News Corporation, the UK government has admitted that there is a concerted and intentional campaign, a misinformation campaign to mislead the public about electric cars, to mislead the public about electric car sales, to make it look as though they're not popular in order to discredit them. There's a global campaign going on. Now, if you support this mass media that are involved in this campaign, you're basically incentivizing them to continue doing it. So my suggestion is I don't watch them. I don't listen to them. As far as I can, I avoid mainstream media because, like I said, if we now know, if the UK government is saying, yeah, they're doing this, then they're sure as hell doing this.